to start the webinar. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kostas Goulias. I have the honor and the pleasure to be the chair of the International Association for Travel Behavior Research. And this is the very first online event of our association. The special thanks go to Karisma Chowdhury, who serves two roles. She's our treasury, has the money, and the secretary, which misorganizes everything for us. And Giovanni Circella, both of them had this idea of organizing something online as a patch for the delay in our triennial conference that will happen in Chile in December 11, 14 of 2022 instead of 2021 due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. It is also our host is the amazing organization of UC Davis, and Cristina Echeverri and Natalie Ruiz have been phenomenally organized, very well organized. Thank you. To create this, whatever it takes to have this celebration. So what are we going to do today? Two major tasks. One is to celebrate the Lifetime Achievement Award for this awardee, for this cycle, and also to celebrate our Eric Pass awardee for this year. You all know that we made the announcement that the Eric Pass awardee is Thomas Hancock, who was co-advised by Stefan Hirsch and Karisma Chowdhury. So this is the second part of the webinar. I'm ready to make the announcement. I cannot wait. So can I go ahead and tell everybody who is the Lifetime awardee? So my friends, oh, I see Beba. Hi, Beba. The Lifetime awardee is Patricia Mokhtarian. I knew Patricia as Pat Leon Mokhtarian, and here she is. I need to change my background because, yeah, you're much faster than me, all of you. See. Where is my background? I can't find my background. Here it is. Yeah, major congratulations, Pat. I can clap live.
Congratulations.
And here's what we're going to do for the next segment. First of all, it's an honor to introduce Pat as the Lifetime awardee. Yes, tell you that. Met Pat for the first time when she interviewed at UC Davis for a faculty position. I was on my way out, and Pat was on her way in. Within a few years, we named her Dr. Telecommuting. But Pat did a lot more than just telecommuting. And you're going to hear in a second from everybody. So with no more delay, I will call your names when it's time for you to say a few words. We are going to first start with Amalia Polidoropoulou, who is the chair of the selection committee. She will tell us how everything happened. And then we're going to move from Pat's past to the present. So I'm going to call your name as we travel through time. Amalia, the floor is yours.
I'm truly honored as the chair of the selection committee of the 2021 IATBR Lifetime Achievement Award to be part of this exciting ceremony. With great enthusiasm, the selection committee, Professors Chandra Bhatt, Juan Dios Ortuzar, Eunice Jang, Maria Kamariani, and myself received this year the best possible nomination in recognition of her fundamental and sustained contributions to travel behavior research, Professor Patricia Mokhtarian. Paut's outstanding nomination was submitted by Professors Kaspar Korus, Giovanni Circella, and Ram Pediala, signed by a large number of prominent supporters, including 7 past winners of the Lifetime Achievement Award, as well as a plethora of distinguished members of IATBR. For many decades, Pat has influenced the travel behavior research, education, and transportation profession through her pioneering work. She has provided exemplary service to the IATBR community, serving as a member, vice chair, elected chair, and chair of its board. Personally, I still remember being inspired as a graduate student by Pat's innovative papers on telecommuting and residential location, such relevant and critical subjects in our days as well. Since then, I have developed an even growing admiration for Pat due to her exceptional personality, cutting-edge research, achievements, and outstanding professional career. Pat is an inspiring role model that we always look up to, a leader who has the capacity of shaping the field of travel behavior for generations to come. My warmest congratulations, Pat. Thank you for your profound contributions to the world of transport and especially to IATBR. Thank you.
Outstanding. So we'll start from the past. Frank, it's your turn.
Thank you, Kostas. It gives me great pleasure to congratulate Patricia Mkhitaryan on being awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award of the IATBR for 2021. Pat is the first woman to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award, but she will soon be followed by others. I remember Pat as a young woman coming to ask me to be her PhD advisor. I already had learned about Pat. If she had not come to me, I would have gone to recruit her. Pat was a wonderful student, curious, creative, and caring of her work and the people around her. She was also energetic and enthusiastic and a joy to work with. These characteristics have defined her and her work to this day. Pat was one of my first two doctoral advisees. They, Eric Paz and Pat, were both outstanding students and researchers and became outstanding teachers. Sadly, Eric died in 1997, a great loss to the IATBR community. He's remembered through the Eric Paz Best Dissertation Award. Pat went on to achieve an outstanding career as a researcher, teacher, and representative of our community. She contributed new concepts and formulated methods to study them. She traveled widely, lecturing on important aspects of travel behavior, theoretical concepts, and analytic methods. Her activities and her qualities are demonstrated in her CV. I expect some of the other commenters to be more explicit about these accomplishments. Pat, I'm delighted with this confirmation of you as a leader in the field. I wish you continued success and pleasure in your career and your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
I think you're on mute, Pat. If you said something, you're on mute.
Oh, I just said thank you so much. It means everything to me to hear that. Thank you.
All right. And the next one would be Hani Mahmasani,
Oh,
who
okay.
is at Northwestern University, knows Pat for a very long time. I still remember Hani, Pat, and Ryuichi walking through Omni Sorham long time ago at TRV. And I said, oh, the trio dangerous is going by. Hani?
Okay, you know, I actually wrote the criteria for this award many years ago when it was founded in 2003 and was at the time awarded to none other than Professor Frank Koppelman. So it's just nice to see the sort of the cycle go back. I believe Pat may have been on that very first committee, if I recall, because I know we tussled over some of the writing. Pat, remind me if I'm correct. Were you on that committee, that very first Lifetime Achievement Award committee?
I honestly don't remember. I've got photos of other members of the committee, so I'm thinking I wasn't on it, but
anyway, so we
so long ago.
So certainly, I can't cannot think of anyone who fits the criteria of that award better than Pat in terms of, as Amalia had read them, in terms of fundamental and sustained contributions, being widely known among the IATBR community and influencing the field through writings, teaching, service, and nurturing of younger professionals. But there was one item that we tussled over, which was individuals known to be at or near retirement from full-time professional service. What that was going to be one criterion, and I actually don't know if it has remained or not. I haven't seen the latest, but that certainly wasn't that first one. And I seem to recall Pat objecting to that very particular term being included there. That's why I mentioned that. So therefore, Pat, congratulations, and there is no expectation that you will be near, certainly at or near retirement anytime soon. We have to have you with us for many more years as an active leader, but in thought and in action. It is, though, a poetic justice, one must admit, that certainly given all your contributions to the telelife and the impacts of ICT on everything and on travel, that the very first virtual Lifetime Achievement Award has to go to you. So congratulations. But we all know of your love of travel, particularly for its own sake. And unfortunately, we did not get to engage in this time, but I certainly look forward to when we can all be together in person and truly celebrate. And in the meantime, congratulations, and cannot think of anybody who's more deserving than you.
Thank you, Hani. So the next person is a person that bridges from Pat's past to today, and that's Ram Pendiala. And the Ram and Pat are collaborating actively right now. So Ram is a senior, major contributor to everything. Ram.
Thank you, Kostas, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have this opportunity to say a few words about Pat. Now, I do actually have a 6-page speech, so I mean, this one really merited a speech to be written. So Kostas, just stop me whenever I pass my time. I think any of us can just go on and on when we talk about Pat and all that she has done for us and what she has meant for us. I mean, in many ways, I think 2021 should be declared as the year of Pat. In case you haven't been keeping score, Pat is kind of racking up the awards. So of course, the IATBR Lifetime Achievement Award for all of her research. But in addition, the Zephyr Foundation awarded her the Industry Contributor Award, which gives you a sense of the appreciation she has, both in the research community as well as the industry community, and how much her work has meant also to industry. And I also keep in touch with the chair of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Georgia Tech, and he was kind enough to let me know the great news that as of July 1st, Pat is going to be stepping into an elevated endowed chaired professorship. And so between the chaired professorship, the Zephyr Transport Award, the Zephyr Foundation Award, and the IATBR Lifetime Achievement Award, that is quite an amazing recognition of what Pat has accomplished. And so this is really the year of Pat. When I thought about what to say, there's so much that comes to mind. Pat has meant so much to all of us and to me personally. Certainly an illustrious career of many accomplishments, remarkable productivity just in terms of publications, intellectual contributions, the sheer scholarship, the trillion citations. A billion isn't what it used to be, so now it's all a trillion, citations, and the students that have gone on to do great things in their own right. It's really incredible to see and witness Pat's journey and all that she has accomplished. And truly, Pat is one who has done it all. You know, she's done, of course, all of this incredible stuff in research, and for which she is, of course, being recognized today with this award. But if you really look at what Pat has done, she has done so much professional leadership and service. She has done so much institutional leadership and service. For decades, she was the lead of the Transportation Technology and Policy graduate program at UC Davis. At Georgia Tech, she has served as the Transportation Group Coordinator for several years. And so she has never shied away from any task. And for years and years, she has consistently, semester after semester, taught the mandatory undergraduate class on probability and statistics for civil engineers. So she has just done it all and really served as an exemplar of excellence in every aspect of a faculty member's duties and responsibilities and service to the profession and to students. And so I could go on and on. I mean, her contributions to ICT and travel behavior, residential self-selection, positive utility of travel, multitasking, all of these are so creative and so amazing that they have really spawned streams of research that have been undertaken by legions of researchers who have strived to follow in her footsteps. And of course, her latest body of work in trying to understand relationships between attitudes and travel behavior, which is front and center in what we're trying to do together with the Tom Net University Transportation Center, has been simply amazing. Every piece of research she does is so thoughtful, tells such a compelling story, and is very deeply insightful. And so that has been so informative to all of us as researchers. But there's more to Pat than her incredible CV. And I have personally had the privilege of interacting with Pat in different roles. And I think Kostas alluded to that as kind of that bridge. So Pat was on my PhD examining committee. So I was her student. I spent 2 years, glorious years, at Georgia Tech. And so I had the privilege and honor of having Pat as my colleague. And now with the University Transportation Center TomNet, we are collaborators. But most importantly, she has been a tremendous friend. And for that, I am truly, truly very grateful and very honored. And so if you will indulge me, I'd like to just mention 3 things really quickly, where I felt Pat really stands out and really speaks to who she is, both as a scholar, but also as a human, as a person. Some of us, and you know, Frank alluded to the passing of Eric Paas, and a dozen years later, we lost another stalwart with Ryuichi Kitamura. For many of us, folks like Eric Paas and Ryuichi were mentors. They were guiding lights. And some of us felt lost when both of them passed away about a dozen years apart. Pat really stepped in to fill that void. She held our hand, she guided us ever so gently, and she took the time, always took the time to be there by our side and to provide us inspiration and guidance to continue our own journeys in this profession, always giving us the room to explore new ideas, but also never hesitating to give us advice, ever so kindly, and always spending the time to help us. The 2 years that I got to spend with her at Georgia Tech will stay with me forever. Those were just amazing years, and I am so grateful to have had that opportunity. I learned so much in those 2 years and cherished every interaction I had with Pat. In fact, and Pat knows this, no day was ever complete or fulfilled for me unless I made the walk across the hallway between our offices, went to her office, and had a heartfelt conversation with Pat. And we had many of those conversations. Each and every one of them was intellectually very inspiring, very insightful. I learned so much. But true to Pat and all of her research, all those conversations always elevated my state of well-being. And so it was just incredibly positive experience, and something that I will never forget and always cherish in terms of all of our conversations and the time that she generously gave to me every time I walked over and talked with her. And even though I'm out of sight, so to speak, and left Georgia Tech, it's not like she let me go. So she has held on to me and continued to support me. So even as we speak, and even yesterday, Pat took the time to write a long email and explain all kinds of things to me about, guess what? Work from home, and how do you define it? How do you measure it? How do you quantify it? And still just very insightful and so thoughtful. And so Pat is not one who will just let you go. She is always going to be by your side. And third, I just wanted to mention, if you actually talk to Pat and meet Pat, she doesn't talk much about herself. She doesn't talk about her many publications and many citations and many honors and awards. But what she does talk about and will gush on and on is about her students. She will just talk about her students and how fantastic they are and the amazing things that they're doing and how she loves them and adores them. And it is just amazing to see the twinkle in her eye when she is talking about all of her students, just as she would talk about, just as though they're all her children. And so many of us do consider ourselves in that way, but it really speaks to her dedication and the amount of pride and joy she takes in the next generation of scholars that she is creating. And so these are just some of the things I wanted to say. So I could go on, but I should probably bring this to a close. And so I will close here with a deep sense of gratitude, both for this opportunity to say a few words, and of course, a deep sense of gratitude to Pat for all that she has done for the profession, all that she has meant to many of us and to me personally. When the story of Pat, I think, is ultimately written, and many years from now, I think it'll be undoubtedly one that's very professional for all that she has done, but for many of us, it will also be deeply personal. And thank you, Pat, for everything, and congratulations on this very richly deserved honor. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Ram. This was...
You said 6, I counted 7, but hey.
Yeah, that's okay. So indicative of Pat's influence on many people is the next segment, which we will start with Jason Cow, which I think he's one of the first PhD students. Ram had Pat on his committee, but was Ryuichi's student. And then there have been individuals, persons that were influenced by Pat as a mentor, maybe not on a PhD committee, but on all kinds of other activities. So we'll go with Jason first, then Cynthia. Just give you a roadmap for the audience to know when this will end. Cynthia Chen, and then Giovanni Cicella. And I see Beba Kerki, who served for a very, very long time on IATBR leadership position. So we will give also Beba some time to say something about Pat. And at the end, Pat will tell us something, I hope. So Jason, you're next.
Okay, thank you, Costas, and congratulations, Pat. It's really happy, for me, to congratulate you at this time. And so this year is about 20 years ago, I was honored to become your student. And, this party reminds me my old times at UC Davis and also my beautiful memories working with you. And then, all of the professors have talked about your achievement, but I'm thinking about, talk about your personality and your scholarship from students' perspective. I want to highlight two things. I have too many things to share, but I want to leave some for your retirement party, okay? So I will talk about two. And one is regarding your dedication to mentoring. I still remember the first time I came to UC Davis, I wrote a report. You told me, okay, write on the single-sided double space. I think Patty is not an environmentalist because she is visiting papers. And then later on, I realized I was wrong because, she needs that space to mentor me because I can see, on the margins in between the lines, I can see her handwriting everywhere. And then when I turn on to the next page, I find out there's something on the back of the previous page. It was a little bit intimidating, right? Because, I feel, I was so, so bad, in terms of writing. And then when I check my American colleagues' work, and I find kind of the similar story, and I feel a little bit relaxed. Then, now I become a professor. I know, how dedicated she is, in mentoring the students. She's not only correcting our grammars and then how to write the paper, and also tell us why she made this kind of revision and why we should use this word instead of the other words. Think about from my perspective, I think this is really, really valuable, for international students. So that shaped me in terms of from a poor writer to be kind of okay writer. Okay, so this is the first in terms of dedication, and the second one is regarding her rigorousness. And she always tells me, you cannot only just tell the good things, right? So when you write a paper, you need to tell the readers the good things and also the bad things, and then let the reviewer to make the judgment, because this constitutes kind of the integrity of the research. You want to be as rigorous as possible, and then let others judge your work. Don't shy away from your limitations and the shortcomings, because no research is perfect. And then sometimes I feel, this is just first a lot of work, and also sometimes expose my weakness to the readers. I don't feel really comfortable. And sometimes I really hate working with her, because that put me just kind of very awkward situation. But later on, when I became a professor, I'm in the academic for many years. I now realize that's really the right thing to do. And then her attitudes and then her personality shaped my career. How to be a scholar. I think this is really I really appreciate her mentorship. And overall, I would say her dedication to students and her rigorous to research, and also her wisdom guided my career development, and also is guiding my scholarship now. And sometimes I send an email to her, asking some questions as a student. Right. So even 15 years after I graduate, I still learn from her. So I feel really fortunate to be her students one time and also a student forever. Congratulations, Pat.
Great, Jason. Thank you. Cynthia.
Thank you. Congratulations, Pat. And thank you for inviting me to speak a few words about Pat. And it's really a great honor for me to be here. So first, I just like to read a few passages of a famous Chinese poem written 1,300 years ago. A good rain falling just in time for spring. On the heels of the wind, it slips secretly into the night, silent and soft. It moistens everything. So this beautiful spring poem reminds me of Pat as a mentor. Many people know that Pat was actually not my PhD advisor. My advisor was Rich Kitamura. But without Pat, I may not have graduated. I worked with Pat very closely during my PhD program. And one paper resulted from that work remains as my most cited paper still today. And more importantly, Pat's mentoring to me was just like that good spring rain. Moistens everything silently and softly. And that is the true spirit to me of education and mentoring, something that I still strive to achieve today. So that's it.
Thank you, Cynthia. Very, very nice. Can we, Giovanni and Beba, can we interchange the two of you, and Beba goes next, and then at the end, Giovanni closes the whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
Well, thanks for inviting me to say a few words about Pat. What can I say, Pat? I mean, I'm honored to know you. I mean, we have never worked together, but work in terms of, supervising or being in the committee, etc. But I had the pleasure to share with you 4 years as an IATBR officer. And I remember also when you finish, I was always, involving you in all the discussion because you're a great person. So, and you're not only a great scholar, everybody, after everybody mentioned that, but for me, you are a great person. And I remember always writing to you, asking, Pat, I need your wisdom, please. And she is really, really wise. I mean, she always has the right answer, very clever, very balanced. So, it's a pleasure. And I remember because I value so much your opinion, then I also created distinguished advisory boards for the transportation research part A, and I invited Pat to be part of it because I need her wisdom. And funny enough, there are 4 people which I like to mention in this distinguished board. 3 of them have got this prize. David Ensher, Juan de Dios Ortuzar, Pat, and Hani. So, 3 of the great colleagues who got this awards, they are in this distinguished advisory board. And so, Pat, thanks for being there every time I ask you any comments, and I learn a lot from you, not only reading your papers, etc., but also as a person. You taught me a lot how to be a good person. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. So we are at 108 participants right now. Amazing, isn't it? 1/3 of our membership is here, at least. So Giovanni, you close the whole cycle of the other persons and give.
Thank you, Costas, and good morning, all. I'm very, very honored to be here today, and it's a special day to celebrate Pat that really fully deserves this award. And for me, this is quite an emotional moment. I think Pat has meant so much in my life. She has been a role model, not only scientifically, but for everything, from her friendship, advice, really everything that Pat means for all of us. And I think the words of all the great colleagues that have spoken so far really summarize this full personality that Pat has. A fantastic researcher, great professor, phenomenal instructor. Probably all of us will look at her like, in awe for her classes that she gives to her students, but also the great friend and almost a person of a family that people go to ask for advice and chat about problems and ask for her wisdom. And I really want to thank all the colleagues and all the great community in the International Association for Travel Behavior Research for really converging to this decision to give this prestigious award to Pat. Special thanks to Ram and to Kaspar Korus for their efforts in putting together one fantastic nomination. I would say Pat made our life easy because really she had so many reasons for being the recipient of this award. It was very easy to make a decision. But starting from she's a past chair of IATBR, all her contributions. So it was a very simple decision, I would say. In essence, Pat is the travel behavior research community, and she really represents a monumental figure in this field. For me personally, I have shared so many years with Pat. I cannot believe it. It's been more than 50 years. So 2006 was the first time I started collaborating with her. I met her a few years before when she was visiting. I was a student in Italy. She picked me up there somehow. She came to give an invited lecture, and I fell in love with the depth of her ability to communicate, the fantastic, achievements of our research, but in very simple terms, explaining really how we can explain the way human makes their choices and how we can really explore into the attitudes and the preferences of individuals and how technologies are affecting the decisions of traveling versus not traveling, or traveling for its own sake, as one topic that Pat certainly dedicated a lot of efforts to study. And I also have a little bit of a special role today, because somehow I am the only one affiliated with both institutions that Pat has been really important for. And so I share my time between UC Davis, where Pat started her prestigious career, and she spent 23 years of her life, 23 years of very, very productive work, really building a great field of research there. And I bring also congratulations from Ben Sperling and Susan Handy, all the colleagues from UC Davis. They still miss Pat so much, because somehow it was not easy to fill into the shoes of Pat for anybody. And they would love to have still Pat with them there in Davis. But also in the last 8 years, I've been at Georgia Tech looking at the fantastic work that Pat has done there, creating a group working in travel behavior research, cooperating with all the other colleagues there, that all of them love her and bring her their congratulations today. And so I really think the esteemed colleagues that have spoken so far really touch a lot of the scientific and research merits of Pat, but I really want to spend the last few words today to really touch the topic that I think is the heritage that Pat is leaving behind her. The great students and the great people she has advised. Some of them are very accomplished professors here in the panel today or all over the world. And some others are current students still, but it's amazing the change that Pat is bringing to the life of everybody. And it's amazing the love that everybody has for Pat. Many of our current or former students are as attendees today here. They're all enthusiastically proud of their instructor, their mentor, their advisor, but also they really look at Pat as the person that is shaping their life and is making a fantastic contribution in the classroom, in the research meetings, but also outside, when gathering in Pat's place for fantastic social meetings, for the typical meetings at TRB, when we get together with Pat former students and we see all the love that the community shares for her. This is Pat Mokhtaria, a person that really gives a lot to the science and research, but also a person that makes a very, very important impact on the life of all of us. And I think this is one of the reasons also for which we fully deserve this award. And I'm really happy for that. Congratulations, Pat.
All right. Wow. I was a good closing. Pat, it's your turn now.
Oh my. Well, what can I say? Thank you to all of you who just said these nice things. Some of them seemed a little exaggerated to me, but I appreciate the spirit behind them for sure. And I must admit to being overwhelmed and seriously overjoyed by this enormous honor, which is really the honor of a lifetime, literally. And of course, there are a lot of people who have helped me arrive at this place. I certainly didn't travel in a single occupant vehicle to get here. So I just want to take a few minutes, not so many, to express my appreciation to all my fellow passengers, many of whom are here today. The first person to thank is clearly my own major professor, Frank Koppelman. And he, as you know, was the very first Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. And when I told him the good news about today's award, I pointed out that I've been following in his footsteps from the beginning of my career to the end, or at least, to this point, and no doubt beyond. I've sometimes thought about my own students and wondered, does a major professor really make that much difference to a smart student? A smart student seems like is going to succeed regardless. But then I look at what I've learned from Frank and what I'm still continuing to put in practice from what I've learned from Frank, and like to hope that it's the same for my students. And Jason, I may have mentioned to you at some point that I also contacted Frank, at least 15 years after my PhD for advice and even a technical question. And he assured me it was a lifetime commitment being a mentor. And so I certainly hope to fulfill that with my own students and collaborators over the years. And that's the second group of people to thank, is all the students, visiting scholars, colleagues that I've been privileged to collaborate with over these years. A proverb says that as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And my own work has been made immeasurably better by all the interactions I've had with my brilliant co-authors. But not just my work being made better, but my life has been made better. So one of the best perks of an academic career is the opportunity to make friends all over the world. And I really treasure all of those friendships, not just with collaborators in the technical sense of the word, but with many other colleagues as well. I also want to thank those who've initiated and supported this nomination. I'm glad they were named because I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to know who they were or name them myself, but Casper, Giovanni, Ram, and all of you who signed the letter. I really want to thank all of you. I know we're all very busy and we have plenty of necessary things to do in our life. And it's an effort to make time for an optional task like preparing a detailed nomination for an award like this one. So I really can't thank you enough for caring enough about me to start this process that ended in this very happy way for me. And then I would say I'd be very ungrateful if I didn't thank God, who's given me so much throughout my life. The New Testament reminds us that everything we do has been built on what we have been given, either directly by God or indirectly by him through parents or family, teachers, mentors, students, colleagues, employers, research funding agencies, life experiences, and so on. So I am beyond grateful for the countless gifts that God has given me and for his daily wisdom and guidance as I ask him to help me use those gifts to the best of my ability and for the good of other people. So, thanks again. I've often thought that, 50 years from now, no one is going to be reading my papers, but I hope that the friendships I've made and the students I've helped mentor and support will be continuing in some way the legacy that I do see as hopefully what I'm bringing to the field. So with that, I'll just close by saying that I'm looking forward to Dr. Hancock's seminar. His work is not only an exciting subject in its own right and already an inspiration to my own students, but even more, it's a symbol of the vibrancy and creativity of today's younger scholars in our field. The future of travel behavior research is in really terrific hands, and I'm eager to see where these younger drivers are going to take us older passengers. So thank all of you again so much, bottom of my heart.
All right, thank you, Pat. This was very fitting for you and for our association values and principles. You are the personification of them. And thank you once again. And this completes our celebration, and I pass the baton to Charisma, who is going to introduce Thomas and his great work. Thank you all. At 107 right now, we went 109, 107. So 1/3 of our membership is here with us, listening to the very first webinar. And Charisma, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about also the plans for the other webinars, or Giovanni, and how we are going to bridge to 2022 for the other conference. One last announcement, if you did not hear, we already planned the conference in 2024. It's going to be in Vienna. Yuzak Susilo is the organizer. So the next 3 years of your life, 4, whatever they are already planned. You don't have to worry. 2022, December in Chile, 2024 in July, Vienna. And if you want, we can plan even 2027, no problem. All right, Charisma, the floor is yours.
Yes.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you all for the great, great, great celebration.
Thanks, Kostas. And it's great to have such a good attendance. So basically, when on the 2021 IATBR conference, we thought that it will be good to arrange some online events to keep us connected. We also felt that it will enable us to reach a wider global community of travel behavior researchers who may have missed out actively participating in our IATBR events due to various constraints. So before introducing Thomas, and I also wanted to mention again that Giovanni and UC Davis conference support team provided enormous support to make this a reality in terms of technical terms, and many thanks to them again. So in our first event, so we planned 3 events. So this is the first one, and then we are going to have another one in August, and the third one in November. So all featuring like the past IATBR Eric Pass dissertation award winners or honorable mention recipients. And we thought it will be also good to have the past IATBR Lifetime Achievement Award winners as discussants, so that like they can also provide insights about how this research fit into the kind of wider aspect of travel behavior research and what is the future of travel behavior research. So today we have the 2019 IATBR Eric Pass Dissertation Award recipients, Dr. Thomas Hancock as the main presenters, and Professor Tommy Gärling, the 2018 IATBR Lifetime Achievement winner, has kindly agreed to be the discussant. So I will just say a few lines about their bios. So Thomas obtained his PhD in choice modeling and travel behavior research from the University of Leeds in 2019. And I was fortunate to be one of his co-supervisors along with Professor Stefan Hess. So since finishing his PhD, Thomas has continued working at University of Leeds as a research fellow. His main areas of interest are understanding the decision-making process, the integration of econometric choice models and mathematical psychology, and also to better specify the models, better interpret various types of kind of challenging behaviors like moral choices, for example. And work thus far has focused on the implementation of decision field theory and ideas from quantum cognition in choice modeling. So today he will be presenting his doctoral research on travel behavior modeling at the interface between econometrics and mathematical psychology. And as mentioned, we have Professor Tommy Gärling as a discussant. He got his PhD in psychology from Stockholm University in 1972. He was assistant and associate professor of applied psychology at Umeå University, and later research professor of psychology and planning at the same university. In 1992, he was appointed as professor of psychology at the University of Gothenburg. He has also held positions at the University of California, Berkeley, Irvine, and Santa Barbara, University of Bergen, Aarhus Business School, Karlstad University, and Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. His research focus over the years has ranged from fundamental research in spatial cognition and judgment and decision-making, with applications in navigation and orientation in the environment, route planning and travel choice, and residential choice. In recognition of outstanding and sustained contributions to the field of travel behavior research, IATBR awarded him the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2018. So without wasting further time, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Thomas Hancock. And just to mention, if you have any questions, just type them in the Q&A box. We will get to them at the end. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my slides just firstly to check?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. Firstly, thank you for inviting me to give this talk today to the IATBR board to set this up. And congratulations to Pat with the award. Really inspiring hearing about all of the things you've done and the recommendations you got, and the praise was just incredible. So today I'm going to give an outline of my PhD. It's going to be, I'm going to try and keep it just a sort of outline, because to go into too much detail would take too much time. So I'm going to give a little flavor of everything that was in it. And hopefully, if there's one particular topic you're interested in, you can go away and have a look. And I'll be more than happy to speak to you about it in more detail if you ever have questions.
Thomas, can you see if you can make it a slideshow or something? Because we can also see the sidebars.
Yeah.
Yes, that's better. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so yes, I'm going to be talking about travel behavior modeling at the interface between econometrics and mathematical psychology. And the first thing I should say is I'm not trained as an econometric person or as a psychologist or a mathematician. So I'm actually kind of well placed to be in the middle between these two. And I think that's really helped me with my topic. So I'm going to start with a few examples of stated preference choice tasks here. So here's one from Transportation Research Part A. And this is looking at whether you're going to move location and how much salary you need as an increase for a longer travel time. Second one, this is from Kaspar's taboo trade-off data set. This is in the general choice modeling. Here's a new transport policy. Will you accept it or not? The third one, this is on apartment choice. So which apartment are you going to choose? And there's various attributes of this apartment. And this one's in cognitive psychology. So really very different journals, but all really rather similar in the case that we're answering stated preference choice tasks. So my question here is econometrics and mathematical psychology maybe not so different. So both regularly consider stated preference choice tasks, both attempt to understand preferences of individuals, both account for heterogeneity in preferences, but in rather different ways. And then there's contextual effects, question order, impact of other alternatives. All of these are considered by both fields. Both of them have a number of different models and different ways of explaining behavior. So really, they look quite similar at the face. They're parallel streams of research, though, and there are not actually many bridges at all between the two. So what my thesis really was trying to do is bridge the gap. So here is another stated preference choice task, and this is actually my morning commute. These are the alternatives I had pre-COVID. I've been working from home for the last almost a year, 3 months now. So this was my morning commute. I had 4 different options. And I wonder if normally I would get people to do a show of hands and see alternatives, but obviously I can't really do that. I can't see you all. And so just have a look yourself and think for a moment, which alternative are you going to choose? Is it going to be the national train, which is faster, a local train service, a bit slower? You're going to get the bus, or you're going to drive yourself? Just take a few moments to think about that. I'll give you a few seconds. And now I'm going to then talk about different ways we might have made this choice. So how might we have made this choice? Well, for a start, we could have done something systematically. So imagine I'm going to make this choice here. So I'm thinking maybe I particularly like going on the train. I can continue to do work on the train. I can phone family or something. You know, I can use my time when I'm on the train. It's a quick train. It's only 20 minutes, but the rate of crowding is pretty bad and the cost is high. So there's 2 positives, 2 negatives. I'm going to give that a score of 0. I can do this for the rest of the alternatives. So local train, yeah, I said I've liked trains. 50 minutes is long though. Cost is good though. So it's cheaper than the national train. Then I look at bus and think, no, time's bad. Rate of crowding is good though. So that's also going to get a score of 0. Car, however, it doesn't look too great when I consider the number of delays. The roads in and around Leeds University are quite busy, so I'm not too keen there. So in this case, I've ended up choosing the local train. It's got the most sort of positives relative to negatives, and I choose the local train to get to Leeds. Now, instead, I might do it more systematically, but by attributes. So if I look at all the different travel modes and I think, actually, car is my least preferable there. It's the one I'm least likely to be able to do I'm not going to be able to do anything else. I'm going to be focusing on driving. Time, well, the bus and the local train are the longest, so they get negative marks there. Rate of delays, car is going to be the worst. Rate of crowding is obviously if I'm on a train, bus and car aren't going to be so bad. And then the cost, the worst, is the national train. So now it's a different choice I make. I'm making the choice of bus. It's the one with the least negatives. So I've done two different ways here of thinking about how I might have made this choice, but there's some inconsistencies here. So firstly, I've assumed that decision makers consider all of the available information. I've looked at everything there and I've gone through it step by step. The utility of the alternative is not directly affected by attributes of others, or at least not in the first case, it was in the second. The utility obtained from alternative is constant. So I'm saying here that it is just a sort of fixed number. And the information is considered in some sort of systematic way. So you'd have seen when I presented that there how I did these systematically. So in mathematical psychology, what if we instead assume that the decision-making process is less systematic? And this is something that is inherently really important in their models. So here, what we've got is dynamic preference over time, and we're doing some sort of attribute comparison. So imagine we've got some sort of preference value for these different modes when you first look at this, and then you're going to start comparing the alternatives, comparing them across different attributes, and updating your preferences. And this is supposed to be a sort of almost mimic what is actually happening in your brain. It's a sort of outline of a deliberation process. So in the first step, I've considered the time. National train looks good. My preference value for national train increases. With the other three, it decreases. I might continue to deliberate, consider the rate of delays, for example. The trains look good. And then this the pink option, local train, has reached the preference line here. So this is saying that one of the alternatives needs to reach a value of 3 for me to choose it. So maybe in this case, I've ended up choosing the local train. However, what might happen is that maybe I'm particularly fussy and actually it takes more for me to be convinced. I continue deliberating instead, consider the other attributes, look at the different factors, and I end up choosing national train. Because at some point I'm going to have to make a decision. I'm going to have to go out and get to where I need to be. I can't just sit at home forever, even if COVID means that that probably is what will happen. So in this case, I've chosen a national train, and basically what's happened is that the initial bias has had less of an impact the further longer I've taken to make the decision. So this is quite, I guess, complex way of simulating the decision-making process. Alternatively, you could try and do something a little bit more simple. And this is one of the different models within mathematical psychology. Is based on a linear accumulation of preference. So what happens here instead is that you still have this idea of initial preferences, but then once you've considered all of the information, you have some rate of increasing preference for each alternative. So what happens in this case is that depending on how long you consider the alternatives, you may still choose different ones. So in this case, local train was my initial favorite, but if I continue to deliberate for a longer time, the bus ends up overtaking. I end up choosing the bus. Another different way you could consider choices is something that's really rather inherently more random. So this is saying that there's actually a lot more randomness in the decision-making process. So we've still got some preference level for each alternative, changes over time. There is fluctuations during the decision-making process due to considering different attributes, but also just due to noise. What we see here is preferences of waves. So imagine that this is the sort of preference values for each alternative, and you exist somewhere in a sphere. You're sort of spinning around. There's still some randomness at the end of the deliberation process in this version of this model. So the decision maker still makes a choice, and there's still some randomness there that, on another day, you might still see all the same information and make a different choice. So these models that I've just talked about, the first one is decision field theory. So this is the dynamic stochastic preference evolution. It was first introduced in 1992, and I actually went back and looked at the precise date of the paper, the journal it was in. This model is exactly a month older than I am. It was expanded to multiple alternatives and multiple attributes, and then in our paper, we moved it into the travel behavior domain. So that was my first PhD paper like a few years ago now. It attempts to capture this stochastic nature of deliberation, One of the key aims of the model is to capture contextual effects. So this is one of the reasons it was originally developed in the first place, was to capture effects found by behavioral economics, for example, cognitive psychologists. Then there was the linear ballistic accumulator. This was introduced in 2008. This is a different model, where it's been described as the simplest model of preference accumulation. So it's still capturing that sort of mimicry of the deliberation process, but it's actually been designed to be mathematically simple. Now, if you read the paper that I've got on these two models, they actually say DFT is simpler mathematically. It depends on what sort of background you have, but for me, implementing decision field theory was actually easier. It performs well on perceptual tasks. I think this is why cognitive psychologists really like it. It's really very good at things like the adopt motion direction task. So this is sort of a task where you have to, it's not just testing preference, it's testing other things about how the brain works. And then there is quantum probability choice models. So this is when I was talking about preference behaves like a wave. That's the sort of inherent idea here. So this is ideas borrowed from physics. So where instead of saying particles or light are sort of behaving in a certain way, we're now talking about preference and comparing preference to those fundamental concepts within physics. And this basically means that we're instead assuming that a decision maker is inherently uncertain. So within a standard models, we're usually saying that it's the analyst who has some uncertainty about the preference values of the people. So we can see some of the things that might influence people's choices, but there's still some inherent uncertainty from our point of view. In this case, we're saying, actually, no, the uncertainty is still with the decision maker. But the decision maker does have some belief state. So this is how they sort of have information, how they store information. And they only consider preferences for alternatives when they're explicitly asked to. So this is really kind of one of the key core psychological principles here, which I think is actually really insightful. So basically what that is saying is that if I'm not thinking about whether I prefer a train or car, then I don't have a preference, train or car. It's only when someone asks me, do you have a preference, train or car, that I think, oh, which one would I choose? And that's one of the key concepts that's built within this model. And what we find with this model is that it's got really good, efficient transformations for change in choice context. So for example, if you have a behavioral nudge, this model is really very good at coping with that sort of thing. So here we've got an example where I'm considering two different travel modes, car or train. And what this is saying is that if I ask myself, how environmentally friendly am I? I'm then going to be more likely to choose train. So basically, I've got this initial preference state, and I converge towards choosing train if I say that I am environmentally friendly. So why haven't these models been used within sort of larger sort of scale transport, travel behavior, choice modeling? Well, firstly, they're computationally intensive. Decision field theory takes about 100 times more longer to run than standard multinomial logic, in my experience. You cannot equivalently obtain willingness to pay measures. The decision-making process is maybe perhaps not considered to be so vital. We're really kind of focused on outputs. And certainly from the psychologist's point of view, they'd say of travel behavior modelers, they're really looking to understand outcomes. They're not as concerned about what actually happens in the brain. And they do not often include clear methods for incorporating heterogeneity. So quite often, because of the way they do experiments within cognitive psychology, they do large numbers of trials, and I don't mean sort of 10 states of preference choice tasks, they do 200 perceptual decision-making tasks. So, you know, they end up with enough data to do a model per person. So it ends up looking quite different because they've got these sort of models per person rather than one model trying to incorporate heterogeneity across different decision makers. And there's mathematical language barriers, without a doubt. We speak different languages. And that's clear just within our own field. We've got so many different names for the mixed logic model. There's one good example. So that is a hindrance as well. Also, these models are often not generalized for different contexts. So quite often they're built to explain one specific a paradigm, so one specific experiment, and then they do something different, then a new model for a different case. So the aims of my thesis were ultimately to bridge the gap between mathematical psychology and travel behavior and choice modeling. So there's a number of steps we really considered here to do this. So it's to create tractable methods for applications of preference accumulation models, develop a choice model based on quantum logic, to compare models, and then to identify when these models are really kind of useful to be, when we should make the move to these models. And then finally, looking at ways of combining approaches in different disciplines. So this is a sort of outline of my thesis, and if there's a particular paper you're interested in, please do, ask me questions later if you want to go and have a look at it. I'm more than happy to speak in more detail. But this is just an outline. This is a sort of summary of what the different parts of my thesis were. So firstly, looking at improving the mechanisms for decision field theory. How can we actually apply this to our data? Secondly, can we incorporate choice response time into decision field theory? Third was do a more rigorous comparison of DFT, the multi-attribute linear ballistic accumulator model, and econometric choice models. Fourth was to develop a quantum choice model, then to apply it to moral choice data. Steps towards these models, making these models more realistic for dynamic data. So for example, driving behavior data, and then a couple of papers on model averaging, where we're looking at bringing these ideas together. So I'm just going to do literally 2 slides for each of these, just to give an outline of what the work I had in my thesis. So chapter 1 outline. So it's mathematical improvements to the underlying mechanics for decision field theory. So one of the main issues with decision field theory before is that there wasn't really sort of good methods for calculating probabilities of alternatives kind of over time. So what I've got here in this graph is 4 different alternatives. This is no longer preference, this is probability over time. So this is probability over time. So the longer you take in this case to make your decision, the more likely you are to choose the yellow alternative. And equivalently, you've got a high initial bias for this green alternative, and it's gradually decreasing over time. And what the work in this paper does is it allows you to calculate these probabilities no matter how many number of preference updating time steps you have here at the bottom. And this makes the model far easier to run analytically, and we're pleased to say that this is now on Stefan Hess and David Palmer's Apollo. So in the Apollo choice modeling package, you can now run decision field theory models. Easier calculation of probability of alternatives, and you have these steps, which is really great. And then, of course, we did our first application to travel behavior, state of preference tasks. With some of our results, we had a Swiss and a UK value of time type state of preference data. And we found that our DFT model outperforms the multinomial logic model. Now, I mentioned before that you don't have equivalent sort of value of time measures from DFT models, but you do have what we call relative importance of time. So it's saying something about the relative importance of these different parameters, and that shows that we have slightly lower, in this case, results than the value of time from MNL. And I will need to test this in more detail to see how consistent this sort of finding is. We also found that there was multiple mechanisms for incorporating heterogeneity, both across and within decision makers within a DFT model. This is something I previously said these models weren't great at, but we found actually we can do this pretty well. And we demonstrated that we could do a sort of mixed DFT with random parameters, and that worked pretty well as well. Chapter 2, so now because we can put this number of time steps at the bottom here where we're saying we can estimate this value, we can then try and link this to response time as well. So what we're saying here is that so what I'm saying here is that in this case, what happens is the longer that you deliberate, the more likely you are to choose this alternative. So if I have some information about the response time, then what that theoretically could mean is that if I make the decision very quickly, the model is going to predict more certainty that I'll pick the gray alternative, so slightly more likely. But the longer I deliberate, the more likely I am to choose this alternative here instead. So there's two key reasons you might be slowed when responding in stage preference, for example. One is that you're being careful, and you're deliberating carefully over the alternatives and making a careful choice. The other is that you could be uncertain. You just don't know. You're taking a while because you don't really know how to differentiate the alternatives. So two very different reasons. And what we're saying in this paper is we're aiming to disentangle these confounding sources of increased choice deliberation time. And the model itself inherently says that probability for one alternative will increase over time and decrease for the other one. So what we found was that response time can be incorporated into DFT models to improve the accuracy of them. That some decision makers seem to be careful thinkers, but for more decision makers, faster decisions are more deterministic from the perspective of the model. So I'm not saying that this is necessarily that they're necessarily making quick decisions, but they're basically what I'm saying is that those decisions are more predictable from the model perspective. But what we found was that the parameter for the number of preference updating steps actually appears to have a very similar role to the scale parameter in a random utility model. So what we've got here is the response time along the x-axis, and here is the scale parameter within an M&L model. And this is the response, the time step parameter within DFT. And we ended up seeing something very similar. So this initial suggestion says that this isn't really a time parameter, it's actually a scale parameter. So the psychologists have perhaps got this wrong, what they think this parameter means. So this is some work that needs, we're still finishing working on this before we submit this to a journal. But what we're saying is that it looks like the parameters may not mean exactly what they are psychologically meant to mean. All right, so chapter 3, this is where we did the more detailed comparison between models, decision field theory and the multi-attribute linear ballistic accumulator. And one of the key things we've done in this paper is to provide sort of detailed analysis and guidance for how to apply these models. So this paper, we were pleased to say, was accepted for publication in Transportation Research Part B just last week. So this is fresh, and you can go have a look at this in detail now. And this will guide you, give us sort of rough guidance on how to use DFT within Apollo as well. So this should help if you want to go and actually try these models for yourself. And what we do in this paper is rigorously compare DFT, MLBA, MNL, and random regret as well, across both SP and RP datasets. We find that both of the psychological choice models do pretty well. DFT does better for the SPs, MLBA for the RP. And we again find relative importance of different parameters, but we actually find there's very few significant differences across the models, both across the psychological and the econometric choice models. And we find that theoretical and empirical identification is important for both DFT and MLBA. And what this means is that the sort of psychological process parameters within the model sometimes help but are also sometimes ineffective. So you have to be really careful when you're specifying these models, and there is information in this paper on how best to do that. In chapter 4, we look at quantum models. So basically, what's been done so far is that cognitive psychologists have basically come up with this new field, quantum cognition, where they do a lot of models based on a quantum framework. Now, it isn't quite sort of choice data, so it wasn't just ready just to go and apply a sort of travel behavior data set to this. We had to think about how this would actually work. But the quantum, I think I've outlined a few reasons for why you might want to use a quantum model. They're very, very good at contextual effects and ordering effects, which we have in travel behavior, crucially. And we wanted to see whether we could use quantum theory to make a choice model. Now, we do two very different outlines. One is we call the amplitude model, and the other is the Hamiltonian model. And what we find is that across many different case studies, actually the value function has a really strong impact. So you have to be really careful about your model specification in the first place. But once you've got that right, we found quite a few successes for the amplitude model in particular. DFT sometimes did slightly better, but the quantum amplitude model did very well as well. The next bit was Pastor Koros was very kind to share his taboo trade-off data set with us, and we applied our quantum model to that. And how this came about was that he had a call for new work and new models on model data at the last International Choice Modeling Conference. And we thought, well, we've got this new model here, how about we try and apply this to model data? And that has actually often been done in a sort of context, cognitive psychology context, just not in a sort of large travel behavior context. And what we found was that the quantum model can again really do a good job of capturing sort of changes in perspective. So is there a taboo or not? The quantum model does a nice job of doing that. And what we find is that the model does a really close match with the observed share accept policy, whether people accept or not. So the orange bars here are the deviation from the true value for how many people accept policy or not. And we see really quite small deviations from the quantum model in comparison to MNL. However, what we also found was that there was no particular evidence to say that the quantum models were particularly suited to model choice data. They seem to do quite well in general. Chapter 6 is about dynamic data. So here's a case study where we've got some preference evolving over time, but suddenly one of the alternatives changes. So alternative 2 was £10 and suddenly drops to £6, and suddenly it looks a lot better. So we wanted to consider whether we've got an inherently dynamic model that's also better for inherently dynamic data. So what we have is driving behavior data, and we're going to apply both the decision field theory and the quantum Hamiltonian model to this data. Both of these are sort of more inherently dynamic models. Again, we found there was some differences, not very much if you don't include memory. So in terms of if you don't have sort of a static case, but if you start moving towards a truly dynamic case, then the model starts to do a bit better. And the quantum one in particular was the best model in this case. And we could find reasonable model outputs for this driving behavior data, such as the gap behind a merging vehicle is more important than the gap in front. So you're more wary, basically, of what's behind you than what's in front of you when you're merging lines. Finally, model averaging. So this comes about from asking the question, how do you choose your final model? Well, actually, you don't have to. You can do model averaging instead. So here, what I've got here is random utility model and decision field theory. They've both got their benefits. They both work in very different ways. But what I can actually do is combine them in the model averaging approach. So model averaging, the way we use it is a sort of restricted latent class model. So what this means is that rather than having a latent class model where we estimate everything, we're going to have a random utility model which we estimate, decision field theory which we estimate. We get those betas, we plug them into our latent class model, which has the components random utility model in one class and decision field theory in another, and then we're only going to estimate the shares in this final model. And what the real benefits of this are is that you could have hundreds of models in this top level. So we have only got 2 here, but you could have many, many and combine them. So obviously, if you had a latent class model with 100 different classes, you're going to have estimation issues. But that's not the case. If you've got 100 separate models here, and then you combine them. And the nice thing is, if you have one model that really does do a lot better, then it's just going to get 100% of the share. So if you do have one model which is really representative of behavior and is the best model, then it's going to get 100% of the share and you're good. Now, the other nice thing you can do here is that you don't necessarily need to know anything about the different model components. So for example, I could ask 10 of you to go and run a model on a particular data and come up with your own model. I then get the probabilities for each data point from each of your models, and I then could do this model here. So it's quite a nice way of avoiding risk. And as a result, model averaging is used a lot in, for example, weather forecasting, but we don't really do it yet in travel behavior. So key findings, we did find that there was a number of case studies where we found consistent improvement in both in-sample and out-of-sample model fit. So for example, we combined different mixed logic models. We did different treatments for non-linearities, models with logical arithmetic or linear cost, for example. And then a number of models for different nesting structures. So for example, here's a map of California, and how do we do mode and destination choice in this data set? So do we have nesting within the sort of county level? Is it more regional, maybe north, south, east, west? And we looked at these different possibilities and found that you could do model averaging across this. Final paper was looking at specific outputs for model averaging regarding what types of heterogeneity we capture in the different models. So what we're really saying here is that model averaging, the way we imply it, does not capture taste heterogeneity. So if I've got this model explaining every single person and this model explaining every single person, and then I fix the betas, then there is no way to account for taste heterogeneity in the two different classes. But if I estimated all of them separately, I could account for it. So basically what I'm saying is that if I compare my model averaging compared to latent class, the latent class model will pick up a lot more taste heterogeneity than the model averaging one will. And this will tell us something about what are the true underlying sources of heterogeneity in our data. So we had two case studies. The first one, we found absolutely zero gain from using model averaging, which suggests that all of the gain was from taste heterogeneity rather than, for example, decision rule heterogeneity or attribute non-attendance. The second one, we had quite a bit of model averaging, suggesting that there was, still mostly taste heterogeneity, but there was also some decision rule heterogeneity quite clearly from our data. So there are numerous next steps for these models. I think this is, I would hope, that only the beginning of the sort of bridging the gap between mathematical psychology and econometrics. So for example, can we also bring it in machine learning? Can we also really examine the decision-making process and link associated process parameters? So that's when I'm talking about the number of deliberation steps, linking that with response time. Or for example, eye gaze movement, where I'm looking, can I link that with the importance weights for different parameters, for different attributes, incorporation of physiological data, for example. Further comparisons of outputs, so we need to better understand all the measures that can be obtained from these models. So basically, for example, my relative importance of time, how does that really compare to the value of time? And then further steps towards truly dynamic models, better models for modeling driving behavior, for example. And these are only a few examples. Now, I thought I'd finish with a slide, a couple more slides. One, a few comments for future applicants of the Eric Pass Awards, or for new PhD students in general. So first, my first bit of advice is to be brave. Try and think outside the box and step away from the tried and tested. If your work's not novel, it's not going to stand out quite as much. Now, I'm not saying you have to come up with new things for everything. It's not. You don't want to be new for the sake of it. That's a really bad idea. What I'm saying is that try something different and just try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. You can do something else. That's all right. But try and be brave. Elaborate new theories mean nothing without solid empirical applications. So what I mean by this is that if you come up with some really nice new theory but can't apply it to data, what have you gained? You're not really gaining anything. So I think this is probably, would be my guess, would be one of the reasons I won this award, was that all of my papers, all of the chapters had theory, then empirical application. So I always backed up what I did theoretically with empirical work. And I think that's really, really important. And this is something that cognitive psychologists are really bad at. Not so much travel behavior people, we're better at this, but cognitive psychologists are, and this is why there wasn't really a quantum choice model, because they come up with all these elaborate theories, nice theories, they hadn't applied it to data. Don't try to be too clever when you're writing up your work. Your viewers will get lost and lose interest. So what I'm saying there is that don't skip mathematical steps. I'm really guilty at this actually myself. And I know I've had several comments from both my supervisors and reviewers saying, "Oh, what have you done there? What's that step there?" You're going to waste time. So try and really label what you're doing, try and teach people what you're doing. And if someone doesn't understand, then you've lost your arguments. You know, you really have to back up your work with proper explanations. Next thing, take a step back. Remember to look at the bigger picture. So my best example of this was after, I think, about a year of my PhD. I had a meeting with my supervisors, with Stefan and Charisma. And I remember Stefan saying to me, "Are you going to be Mr. DFT?" And I hadn't thought about it until that point. But when he asked that question, that was me taking a step back and saying, "Are you going to really focus on decision field theory?" And I thought at that point, I can't be boxed into looking at just one model. And that's when I thought, no, I need to go and look at these other models and see what else I can do. It's really important to think about the bigger picture there and think about where you're going with your work. And finally, pay close attention to reviewer comments and present your work as often as possible. So over the course of my PhD, I must have given maybe 15, 16 presentations. TRB deadline is really great, really use that. So that's a really nice point to try and force yourself to get your work down on paper. Stop running new models, stop trying to come up with new things and actually get work out there. And that would be my final suggestion. And one final thing is try and enjoy yourself. That's really important. Finally, if you found this presentation interesting and you want to know more about the work by people at CMC, I'm pleased to announce that the Choice Modeling Centre has a new online seminar series featuring 3 of my fellow recent PhD graduates. And there's the link for the seminars, starting with Evangelos, who's going to present his work on driving behaviour next Tuesday. It'd be really great to see as many of you there as possible. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Thomas. So we are slightly running behind the schedule, but I think we can make it up. So I would now like to invite Professor Tommy Gärling to discuss about Thomas's work and also about the future research potential in this direction.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
You do? Fine. Okay, let's see if this works now. I'm not very... Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fine. First of all, I want to congratulate Thomas to an admirable intellectual achievement. Given my background in the psychology of judgment and decision-making, JDM, I'm also enthusiastic about that he has applied some work in that field. I furthermore thank the organizers for asking me to comment. Since the decision field theory, DFT, proposed by Bussemeyer and collaborators is an important point of departure for the dissertation, DFT will be the point of departure for my reflections as well. In my opinion, DFT is an interesting formal model of the deliberation process preceding a decision, which has been studied in JDM for many years. It's a different, but not the first and only application of psychology to travel behavior research. Early travel behavior researchers became interested in Fishbein and Eisen's attitude theory, and this interest appears to be sustained. Also, some have used Kahneman and Tversky's prospect theory, featuring reference-dependent utility, loss aversion, and nonlinear probabilities, differing from conventional expected utility theory. In the dissertation, stated and revealed preferences, one-shot choices, are modeled with DFT and extensions of that from quantum cognition. And I think it's clear that better fit to data than McFadden's random utility model. Now I will reflect on what advantages and disadvantages DFT has compared to these other applications of psychological theories. So in contrast to my examples, the DFT is a process model. It is quantitative, and like my examples, except some variants of attitude theory, it ignores the possible role of emotions, despite its current strong influence on travel behavior research. Now, instead of giving a kind of detailed feedback on Thomas' dissertation, which I obviously cannot do better than his advisors and the reviewers of his submitted papers, I will raise some general questions. My examples of previous influence of psychology are structural models and not quantitative process models. So why process models and why quantitative models? Last, I will raise an overarching question. What is the relation between choice and satisfaction with the outcome? This is important in as much as the focus of travel analysis is travelers' emotional well-being, which is the kind of emotion that matters when people travel. So, why process models? Well, process either refers to mental transformations of information with the goal of making a decision or intention, forming an intention, resulting in a choice, that is behavior, or the external process of interaction with a changing environment, partly depending on previous choices, with the goal of making adaptive sequences of decisions and choices, for instance, in driving a vehicle. In real life, these types of processes are integrated. Distinction is also made between low-level and high-level cognitive processes. Early research on decision-making in psychology assumed that conscious thinking dominates the decision process, which was possible to reveal by means of verbal reports. Think aloud, information search, eye fixation, and physiological methods were used, often in combination for cross-validation purposes. In computer simulation models, the data were considered as a sequence of states with the goal of understanding the mental transformations of states, similar to debugging computer programs. DFT proposes a sequential sampling model of information acquisition, which after estimating several free parameters predicts observed choices. Process and tracing methods are not feasible in the short time scale, characterizing low-level cognitive processes in general. Measures of decision time is then another method to infer type of processing. I'm not saying one approach is better than the other. I think they sometimes are complementary. In other cases, the issue is what type of decisions are modeled. Planning a journey or making strategic decisions, for instance, residential location choice, are the types of decisions that I think is dominated by high-level cognitive processes. Driving a vehicle, the type dominated by low-level cognitive processes. Further thoughts on this would be welcomed. For instance, how can modeling of low-level cognitive process increase the understanding of high-level cognitive processes and the reverse? It should also be noted that applications often not need process models, but solely models that predict choices such as random utility models. But process models will still be useful, as I see it, because when the goal is interventions, to change choices. A process model would be useful. Process models may also be useful for understanding why choices are often suboptimal. That is, to identify the use of heuristics. So why contrary models? A pioneer of behavioral decision-making, Herbert Simon, her early question that expected utility theory can explain organizational decision-making. And for this, in 1978, he received the Nobel Prize in economics. He was a professor of psychology and a PhD in political science. I have read his autobiography with the wonderful title, Models of My Life. In his paper in Annual Review of Psychology in 1990, Invariants of Human Behavior, he argued that invariants discovered in the life sciences are frequently not general and not quantitative, but may nevertheless be very impactful. He and his colleague and collaborator, Alan Newell, referred to them as laws of qualitative structure. He argues, and I cite, psychology does not much resemble classical mechanics. Its laws are and will be limited in range and generality and will be mainly qualitative. Its success must be measured not by how closely it resembles physics, but by how well it describes and explains human behavior. Despite perhaps a more controversial statement today, I think that current psychology is still not ready for quantitative laws that predict behavior. Applications need to recognize this. Quantitative models may still be useful in testing qualitative theories. For instance, systems of propositions realized in computer programs, which was the kind of theories that Newell and Simon worked with. You could say they are useful because they are precisely wrong, but not vaguely right. So finally, what is the relation between a choice and satisfaction with the outcome? Kahneman et al. In the Quarterly Journal of Economics, 1997, made the distinctions between decision utility, anticipated utility, and experience utility. Kahneman has later connected experience utility to satisfaction and subjective well-being. Since results show that satisfaction with outcomes may not always correspond to the choice, satisfaction with travel should only, I think, cautiously be inferred from revealed choices. Several possible accounts of the discrepancy have been empirically demonstrated in psychological research. First of all, the obvious thing, a probabilistic outcome may by chance differ from what was desired or preferred. Second, people have a limited ability to anticipate consequences of their choices. People's preferences change over time and with context. And as a consequence of the variation with context, choices made compared to other alternatives, the outcome is experienced alone. Satisfaction is a well-researched topic in service research. Methods of measurement have been proposed, but may need further development and adaptation to travel services. Theoretical ideas have been developed and are tested in travel behavior research, investigating how different psychological constructs such as perception, control, beliefs, attitude, desire, intention, and satisfaction are interrelated. I think this is a line of research that currently has much promise of integrating psychology and travel behavior research to the benefit of travelers. Quantitative models of choice processes should still play an important role. It remains to determine what this role is. I think the dissertation seemed to be, to me, to be a step on this way, on the way. So thank you and good luck in the future, Thomas. Okay,
Thanks
that's
a lot.
all.
Thanks a lot, Tommy. So yes, it was really great to hear about many kind of future research directions in this area. And as you mentioned, that it's a very worthwhile and interesting direction of the future of travel behavior research. So now moving to the question and answers. So there's one question for you, Thomas. I don't know whether you can see you. Let me just read it out. So the question is from Brett Smith. And the question is, I was just wondering on the DFT and the relationship with time, whether those answering quickly, we're processing less attributes and we're able to quickly compare alternatives by processing a smaller problem, and whether that helps to explain the predictability of choice.
Thank you for that question. It's really interesting. This has actually been what we've been looking at just the last few weeks. This is what we've been working on, is actually incorporating eye tracking information into decision field theory. So I hadn't done this as part of my PhD. It's something I'm looking at right now. That's a really interesting point. I haven't looked at the exact specifics of what an individual person is looking at. So maybe you're right. I think that people are making choices quickly probably are looking at subsets of information. And I've also not looked at how gaze pattern changes over the course of completing the experiment. So for example, it might be that by the time you get to questions 5, 6, 7, 8, you're only looking at the key information that you've sort of worked out. So that's another thing to look at. So it's all preliminary in nature, and nice ideas and nice things to look into. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yes. So any other questions or panelists? Okay, I don't see any more. So let me just remind you again about the future events that we are going to have. So let's just try to share the screens, which has the details. Just a second. Maybe I don't have the screen sharing feature. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I have posted that information as well. 2 upcoming seminars planned. The first one is going to be at the end of August, tentatively 31st August. That's going to be a presentation by Dr. Timothy Brathwaite, who won the 2018 Eric Pass Award. It will be based on his thesis, The Holy Trinity, Blending Statistics, Machine Learning, and Discrete Choice. And it will be followed by a discussion by Professor Eric Miller, who won the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2018. And then in November, possibly on 29th November, we will have a presentation by Dr. Shenhao Wang, who got the honorable mention in the 2019 Eric Pass Award for his thesis on deep neural networks for choice modeling. And it will be followed by a discussion by Professor Juan de Dios Ortuzar, who won the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2012. And we are yet to release the exact times because we want to see how the timing for this seminar works in terms of attendance, because we have audience from so many different time zones. So I think the time zone may be a bit different next time so that it's more favorable for the US West Coast participants. Let's see. Okay, thanks everyone again for attendance. Kostas, do you want to say anything more?
Oh, yes. I want to thank you and Giovanni and Natalie and Christina for the amazing organization. This has been a tremendously well-organized event. Thomas and Tommy, thank you very much. I learned new things. Even old folks learn new tricks or all dogs. Certainly, I want to thank all the participants for Pat's ceremony. Has been emotional, happy, enhanced our subjective well-being in a tremendous way. And let's go to the next. Thank you again. Pat, thank you for being there.
You all so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, so bye everyone. So hope to see you again